Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to discuss food selection factors. So, what this is in regards to is knowing why you choose the food you eat can help you to make better choices. So, I wanted to kind of run through a really quick list of some reasons why we pick the foods that we eat. This is not an exhausted list and it's not really in any specific order, just to give you some ideas of what the heck I'm talking about. So, the number one thing that most people say that they choose foods by is by taste. So, if something tastes good to us, we would feel like, okay, we'd be more likely to choose it as a food to eat. If something doesn't taste good, of course, we're not going to choose that. So oftentimes people will cite taste as the main reason for their food choices. However, that's actually not true. It is true that if something doesn't taste good, we're not going to want to eat it. That's a pretty good common sense statement. However, but just because something tastes amazing doesn't mean we're likely to eat it more often. So typically, actually, the foods that taste the most best, which is a weird way of saying that, but the foods that we think taste the best are not the ones we eat most often, because usually they'd make us weigh 500 pounds, or they're really expensive, or they're hard to get. There's many other reasons or factors that get in the way. So taste is important for sure, but it's not as important as people actually think it is. Another reason that we kind of choose the foods we choose is cost. So I might really like, prime rib steak, but can I afford to eat prime rib steak every day? Probably not. So there are things like lobster. That's good. It's actually just an excuse to dip something in butter and eat more butter. However, lobster and seafood and things like that are a little too expensive for us to be able to have maybe all the time. So cost is a factor. So cost is also a factor why we choose what we choose if we have little to no money. So sometimes if you're struggling with money, McDonald's dollar value menu can seem very tempting because it helps you kind of get some calories in your face, but doesn't break the bank. So cost is definitely something we think of. Another one we think of is convenience and availability. So convenience is, I'm hungry now. What is right next to me that I can just grab, eat, and move on with my life? So that's one aspect. And availability is another one that kind of sometimes is connected with convenience. But availability is, okay, maybe I want, I'm just making up dumb examples here, but maybe I want sushi, but I'm in the middle of a desert. I'm probably not going to find sushi. So at least not really high quality. So sometimes what we want isn't available to us. So therefore we have to choose from what is available to us. So maybe there's, your grandma's favorite recipe, but you can't get your grandma to cook for you every day. It isn't available, so maybe you live away from your grandma. So that would be a factor of why you would choose what you choose. Maybe something is more convenient or less convenient, or more available or less available. Another one is visual appeal. Sometimes we don't eat something because it looks horrendous. So we've never tasted it. We have no clue if it is any good. It just looks horrible, so therefore we're not going to eat it. So as Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction says, sewer rat may taste like pumpkin pie, but I'll never know because I'll never eat that thing. And he says something a little bit different at the end, more Samuel L. Jackson-ish, but that's the idea. So if something doesn't look visually appealing, you're not going to eat it, even if you have no clue what it's going to taste like. Another thing we have is mouth feel. So this is where if in the process of trying to eat something just kind of tastes weird or feels weird. That's actually more accurate, not taste, but something just feels weird in your mouth. So an example of this that I'm well aware of, that I absolutely have dealt with in my past, is I remember when I was doing my pure bodybuilding style diets and everything, that it was cool or said it was helpful to do rolled oats in a protein shake. And rolled oats in a protein shake, when they sit there for a little while, becomes this consistency of food that I have no clue what the hell you're supposed to do with it. It's too thick to drink, but when you chew it, there's nothing to chew. There's no toughness or roughness, or there's no thickness. There's nothing to actually bite down and chew into, but yet you can't drink it. So you're left trying to chew this mushy thing that doesn't do anything. Your body doesn't know whether it's supposed to swallow yet or not because it doesn't have a clue what the consistency is. So I freaking hate that. And I've actually thrown up before trying to force myself to eat rolled oats in protein shakes. So that's something that to me resonates very well. Mouthfeel. It's an odd concept, but we all kind of have an idea of when you put something in your mouth and it tastes like really gritty, or maybe you're eating a piece of fish and there was a bone in there. But there's just something about the feel of the food in your mouth that throws it off. And no matter how good it might taste, you're not going to eat that thing. So another one we have is emotional connection. So sometimes we just have a really good emotional connection with the food. So maybe like chocolate chip cookies fresh out of the oven, kind of reminds you of childhood or reminds you of your grandma or something like that. So there are sometimes we have emotional connections with food. So you can think of one of the most common ones is when people feel overstressed, they drink wine. And you could say other forms of alcohol too, but wine is one of the most common ones. So they have an emotional connection with wine. Does wine actually help them de-stress? No. It actually causes more stress because then they feel like they're breaking their diet and they're going to get overweight. So it actually is a cyclical negative pattern rather than a cyclical positive pattern. So nobody has ever drank wine in a stressed state for a week or two and then all of a sudden felt really good, didn't feel stressed and didn't need the wine anymore. No, it's something you drink every night thinking it's making you feel good, but yet you need the next night too. So it's just continual pattern, cyclical pattern. And over time, it makes somebody feel less and less healthy, less and less in control of their health. They get more depressed and more negative. So it brings on more emotional stressors to rely on alcohol and stuff like that. Now, the next one we have is cooking abilities and or cooking time. So what this could be is if somebody, they might really like flambe, but they don't have a clue how to make it. So I don't even know, can't even really think of what that actually is. Just sounded like something difficult to make. But that's the idea, is if there's something that you would really like to have, like risotto, for example. I love risotto. I think it's freaking delicious. But do I want to take the time to cook risotto? Hell no. So I will go to a restaurant, I'll pay extra money and eat it, but I don't want to have to cook it. So I don't know how to cook risotto. I'm sure if I read the directions, I could figure it out. So I'm actually an okay cook, but I don't really want to commit the time to it. So we might have cases like that. So I've had tons of clients who they'll get home and they'll maybe like heat up a frozen beef patty, heat up frozen vegetables, eat that, and then say that they're not very satisfied with their food. And my answer is no shit. You just ate like crappy stuff that has no real flavor to it, but they don't know how else to cook. So I have run into adults that genuinely, honestly don't know how to cook. No one ever really taught them, and they never really had the ability and or time and or need. I'm not really sure, but they never really figured it out on their own. So it's kind of hard for them to pick certain foods and certain levels of healthiness of foods because they just flat out don't know how to prepare them and don't know how to cook them. Now, another reason we have sometimes the foods we choose is time to prepare the food. So I'll talk a little bit more about this later on here in the podcast. But that's something that for me is something I had to work against is when I am at the end of the day and I get home and I'm freaking tired, I don't want to have to cook some type of meal that might take 40 minutes to cook. I know how to cook it. Okay? And the 40 minutes isn't necessarily that like worst thing in the world. I just don't want to go through the process of it. So this could be another reason why some people don't like to eat vegetables because they have to cut the vegetables. They have to kind of put them in a frying pan, heat them up, cook them to some degree. And they're like, you know what? I don't really give a shit. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not eating them. So I'll just take a multivitamin. So that's sometimes what people choose. Another one we have is kind of social interactions or peer pressure. So we think of peer pressure, we kind of think of drinking alcohol. Maybe your friends in high school or college kind of peer pressured you into drugs and alcohol. But there's also peer pressure, like social pressure, when you're going out with maybe colleagues at work. So you're going out for lunch and you might feel, well, if I order the salad, everybody's going to make fun of me and think I'm a dork. So I guess I'll go ahead and have the nachos and cheese and the full-on Mexican food that I'm going to regret later, not only digestively, but also just because I messed up my diet and I'm no longer making progress towards my goals. So that's kind of some form of peer pressure, social pressure that often messes people up. And we're going to talk about some ideas on how to correct this here in a second. But I wanted to kind of just list some things first for everybody to kind of get their mind thinking. The last one I'll give here is kind of like hunger levels. If you're really freaking hungry, you will eat whatever's next to you. So if you're driving on the road, traveling somewhere to meet a friend or family or something, and you're like, holy cow, I'm super freaking hungry, but we're running late. Let's just stop at Burger King or let's just stop at McDonald's and grab something quick. So that's going to be something that you're super hungry, you don't really want to take a lot of time, so you just grab it and you go. So this is something common amongst people with diets as well. So people who are getting ready for contest prep diets, they'll pretty much eat freaking anything when they get hungry enough. So that's the idea that is common. So those are 10 common reasons why people will pick the food that they pick. And let's go through kind of the top three, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and we'll kind of help you figure out how to correct your own kind of factors. So most people's top three reasons why they pick the food they eat is convenience, cost, and taste. Now, could your three be different than this? Absolutely. This is just a common list, so you might not be common. Okay? But convenience is usually the number one factor. I'm going to eat whatever is relatively easy for me to get a hold of, and it's kind of close by. Convenient as in like it's easy to get, easy to buy, easy to purchase. So just whatever makes it easy to eat that food. That's going to be the number one reason. Number two reason would be cost. So like we said, you might love, prime rib every day, but you can't afford to do it. Or you might be on a tight budget, so therefore you're having to pick kind of crappy fast options just because you don't have the money to spend on better foods in your opinion and in your mindset. Then taste. So we're going to say that we eat things because they taste good. And part of that is true. Part of it is also it just tastes familiar. So we'll often pick stuff that we're familiar with because it feels comforting rather than it actually tastes good. So that's a big factor to think of. And again, knowing why you choose the foods you eat can help you make better choices and can help you identify why you make bad choices. So, 2 examples from my life that hopefully you can learn from and kind of get your mind rolling on this is in the daytime, I tend to be super busy and struggle with taking time to eat. I see it as a waste of time. I've tried to answer emails while I eat, and it just feels like I'm inefficiently answering emails. I've tried to listen to my voicemails and make business calls while eating, and that's just sloppy, and you're not really paying attention very well. So I kind of feel eating is a little bit of a waste of time, and I basically will pick. Since I feel like it's a waste of time and I feel like I'm too busy to slow down and eat more elaborate things, I tend to pick what's quick and convenient. My way of correcting this is to have healthy choices readily available. So I buy packages of cashews because I like cashews. So nuts are a healthy choice for in terms of a meal, like a snack kind of meal throughout the day. So I make sure I have nuts available. They're within arm's reach. Actually, I can look at them right now. So I also have snack crackers. I'll have protein slash granola bars. So Cliff bars. So things that are going to give me some energy, give me some carbs, give me some healthy fats, but they make sure I eat something rather than nothing. So I have to make sure that I have foods available and they're actually sitting right next to me. So I've talked about this in the past podcast, that if I have to get up to go get them, it's hilarious that I won't actually do that. So even if I can see them, but it requires me to get up, I won't do it, which is absolutely insanely stupid. But you'll think to yourself as you're like, oh, I should go get that. And you're like, well, let me finish this email. Then 30 minutes later, you're like, damn it, I forgot to eat. So that's something that's really important for me. Another thing I think of is efficiency of things. So this is going to be hilarious because it's layered of stupidity. But if I get to the gym super early in the morning, I spend all morning in the gym, so a good 6 hours, maybe whatever. And then I feel like in the middle of the day is a good chance for me to kind of maybe early afternoon is a good chance to just get out of the gym. So get out of the environment because you're going to be back in here all evening. So rather than spending, 12 hours, 13 hours in the gym entirely, it's good to kind of leave the gym in the middle of the day. So I will drive from the gym to a Publix grocery store that has sushi, and then, excuse me, then I will drive back to the gym while eating the sushi. So on the way to pick up the sushi, I will listen to voicemails in my phone. I will call or text anybody that's been kind of put off until that moment in the day. You shouldn't do any of this while you're driving, so we'll just say this is theoretical. So if I were so insanely stupid about trying to be efficient, I may, in theory, text message and answer phone calls and call people while I drive. So who in the world would do such a thing? So I in theory would do that on the way to get the sushi. In the sushi in the grocery store, I'm walking around like a maniac, staring at the floor. Hopefully nobody acknowledges me and nobody talks to me, so that way I can get out of there as fast as possible. I will then eat the sushi on the way back to the gym. I will come back in the gym and get back to work, and I foolishly consider that as time away from the gym, which is absolutely stupid. I'm aware of that. But that's one of the things I do. So is the sushi is convenient because it's already pre-made. I get the feeling of getting out of the gym, even though I do work the entire freaking time. But it's how I battle being too busy to eat, and or being too busy to eat anything decent of quality. So by getting out of the gym, driving over, getting sushi, it's better quality than just eating, 4 pounds of nuts every day and then thinking that's a healthy meal. So another issue I struggle with is being tired at night. So you get home from work, you kind of like come through the door, and the last thing you want to do is spend 40 minutes cooking. You just want to freaking grab something, shove it in your face, and sit down. That's the goal. So what I do is to make sure I don't eat crappy foods and just whatever happens to be available, I actually typically will eat meat and rice at my last meal of the day. So when I'm on a diet, it's meat and eggs. But right now it's meat and rice. So I actually start the rice before I start unpacking for the day. So I bring in my bag or whatever else I have in my hands. I come in, plop it on the kitchen table. I go over, put the rice in the rice cooker, pour in the water that's appropriate, close the lid, press the on button, press like the white rice button, and then I go pick up all my crap off the kitchen table. I go put it away in my room, organize some things, maybe run to the restroom, come on back out, and then I start cutting up my meat for my meal. So I cut it up with scissors into small pieces because it cooks faster. I will throw that into a pan. By the time that cooks up, the rice is pretty much done and I have my whole meal within 20 minutes. Whereas if I were to take the time to put everything away first and then put the rice on, I have to sit there and wait until the rice is cooked enough to be able to start the meat. So that feels like it's a waste of time. During that time of waiting, I kind of get tired, fatigued, kind of feel like sitting down, and I'm like, dang, anyhow, if this was already cooked, if I could eat something faster, I'd just be able to sit down. So it gives me time to second guess and not like the meal because it's not as convenient. So those are some things that sound a little bit weird, I'm sure, to some people, but what I've had to learn to do is to work with myself. So if I know these are my behaviors, and if I'm 35 years old right now, by the way, so for 35 years, and now I know I didn't struggle with this as an infant, but let's not do the math. So for 35 years, I've struggled to try to change these behaviors in me. It doesn't seem like that has fully worked. So rather than waiting another 35 years and possibly dying without being healthy, and still being the same stubborn jackass who thinks he's too busy all day, I've learned to work with myself. So that's the idea that I'm presenting to you guys. So if you think in your own life, why do you commonly make bad food choices? And what can you do to correct those choices? So, for example, if you go out to eat at a restaurant and you always overeat at the restaurant, you always succumb to social pressure. First of all, you're a grown ass adult. What in the hell are you worried about social pressure for? If somebody doesn't like you because you eat salad and it makes them feel fat for eating the shitty food that they shouldn't be eating anyhow, that's their problem, not your problem. Screw them. Do your own thing. Okay? Take care of you. If somebody doesn't like you because you eat salad, they're a jackass and you shouldn't have them in your life anyhow. So forget about that peer pressure part. But often what also happens at restaurants is people get to the restaurant, They don't really have any predetermined idea of what they want. So they look through the menu, and again, because it's all readily available right now, they'll determine based a little bit on price, but then they'll mostly determine based on taste. They'll say, out of this list, what do I think would taste good? And then they'll look and be like, well, I can't afford that. So let me go down one step. And they'll say, that'll probably taste good. Let me eat that because I can afford that. Well, chances are if you're making a food choice based on taste, it's not going to be a healthy one. It's not because healthy food tastes like shit. It just doesn't taste as good as like freaking cheesecake, ice cream, and crap that we shouldn't eat. So things loaded with fats and sugars are always going to taste better than health food, even if the healthy food actually tastes okay. So in restaurants, it's best to be prepared and have a predetermined food choice. So, for example, you could get a salad with some type of grilled meat on it, get your dressing on the side, and dip it in the dressing as much as you would need for flavor and taste. That is a relatively healthy meal. Another choice is to pick a grilled meat, and if it's a fatty version of meat, like a red meat, you can just have the meat and vegetables. If it's a lean meat, like chicken breast, grilled chicken breast, you can add a carb, and then have some vegetables. So a carb might be like a sweet potato, but you're not going to soak it in butter and sour cream. So the idea of this is to already have predetermined food choices. That's one of the main reasons why people like diets and why people get on diets to help them lose weight is because it's a set of rules and restrictions. Because it helps them to limit their choices. It says you can only have this, just have this, shut up and eat it. That's what a diet says. So if you find yourself when you're in situations where you have freedom of choice and you make shit choices, give yourself rules, okay? Have a predetermined choice of what you're going to eat at restaurants. So that's one thing that helps. Another thing that helps is to have healthy choices available. So, for example, I was talking with a client recently, and they were talking about the fact that they just purchased pre-boiled eggs as part of their breakfast. So they said, I always plan to take the time at night to boil eggs. I never do. I don't like going through the process of peeling them. It seems like it takes forever. So then I just skip having eggs for breakfast. So recently they started buying packages of pre-boiled eggs. Okay, boiled eggs that are already peeled. And they were telling me that like it was helpful, however they felt ridiculous buying boiled eggs when they could just boil themselves. And I said, that's true. However, were you boiling the eggs? No. So you can feel ridiculous and buy them and still move forward in your diet. Or you can let that ridiculousness hold you back and say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pay somebody else to boil eggs. I can boil eggs myself. And then you're going to continue to not boil eggs yourself and just be a jackass and never reach your goals. So you can be stupid and repeat the same failures over and over again, or you can work within what your limits are and find ways to be successful. Okay? So another thing we have is to have fast cooking methods. So there are very fast food recipes available online, a bajillion of them, so I'm not even going to go through them. Just email, fast cooking recipes or 10-minute recipes or 15-minute recipes. Just Google something like that, and you'll find a bunch of them, okay? So one of the things I do is, like I said earlier, is I cut meat with scissors. So rather than cooking a big chunk of meat, which takes forever to cook, I cut it up with scissors into bite-sized pieces. So number one, it just saves me from having to chew on a big hunk of meat while I eat. And I have 6 fake teeth, and I have some other dental issues. So it's actually nice to have food that I don't have to chew a bunch. So I'm apparently an old man at 35 years old. But it does help. So I found cutting meat with scissors helps it cook faster. And then buying pre-cut or non-prep needed vegetables. So recently I was eating a meal with somebody, and I was cooking, and one of the ingredients they wanted was to have green beans as a vegetable. So I bought a package of green beans that was already had like the stringy ends cut off, and they were already like supposed to be like washed and cleaned. And the person asked, why the hell would I pay more money for that? And I said, well, they were only like 30 more cents, and I don't have to cut all the damn ends off this damn stuff, and it's already clean and everything looks good. So I'd rather just open the bag, dump it into a pan, and start heating it up rather than have to go through all that prep time. So that might sound ridiculous to you. And if it does, okay, hopefully there's other suggestions in here that don't sound ridiculous. But it does help me. So I feel like I have a million and one other things to do. So if I can reduce cooking time, it helps me stay with a better diet. So that's something that's helpful. And then what about cost? So I can't look at each of your individual budgets for the month, and most people don't even have a budget, by the way, of how they actually track the way they spend their money. So if you do not, that might be a good choice. But if you look at where you spend your money, it is best to cut costs, quote unquote, save money on things that don't directly impact your health. So one of my favorite people in the world, they came to join the gym once, and they asked if they could get in at a discounted rate. They said they only had X amount of money per month to pay for the membership because they forwent, I guess would be the way of saying that, a haircut. So rather than getting a haircut at a fancy place that they pay, say $20, $25 a month for, they were just going to cut their hair themselves, and they were going to try to put that $20, $25 a month towards the gym. So we sorted it out. We found a way to make it work, but it was an example of a good idea. So they took away a haircut. That's not something that directly impacts your health. You can still have good-looking hair by cutting it yourself, so it's not like they had to give up their mental and emotional health or relationship health. Their wife wasn't going to leave them just because they had to start cutting their own hair. But too often, people look at food as a place to cut costs. And it's not really the best option because what you eat directly impacts your health. So it's better to look at things that don't impact your health and try to cut costs there. So I was talking with somebody recently, and they had cable television, Netflix, some kind of like Prime Video or Hulu or whatever the hell those things are. I don't know what all that stuff is. But they had like 3 or 4 of those things. And then they had internet at their house. So they had like, I don't even know, like probably $100 or $120 worth a month of just like shit to watch television shows. And they were worried about spending money on food. And I was like, for the love of God, why in the world do you need 4,000 ways to watch television? And they were only really probably watching television like an hour or two at night, and then maybe an hour or two on the weekends here and there. It wasn't even that big of an investment of time. So there were probably plenty of options they could do for cheaper ways. So that was one idea of somewhere to look at rather than looking at cutting costs in food. Cut costs in the 400 ways you have to watch television. That's actually something that might help your health, by the way. So as we listen to all this and me rambling, hopefully there's some good thoughts in here for you. So is again, knowing why you choose the food you eat can help you make better choices. So record for a week when and in what situations you tend to make bad choices. Record it for an entire week and see if you can find a pattern. Do I tend to make bad choices when food isn't easily available to me? Do I tend to make bad choices because I'm trying to cut costs? Do I tend to make bad choices when I'm out with friends? So find a common pattern of why you make bad food choices and try to find ways to correct it. You can listen to some of the ways we mentioned in here, or you can even Google for ideas. There's 4 billion things on Google about healthy food choices and stuff like that. You can also email us at brutaliron@gmail.com. So if you record it for a week, you come up with a common thread, and you don't know how to address that thread, email us, tell us what your problem is, and we'll give you some help, okay? And then the next week, try to implement those ideas and see if you can improve your behavior, your adherence to good food. So remember that nothing changes if you change nothing. So just pick something small, maybe even just one meal a day, and try to address it. One most common mistake that you make throughout the week. And try something to change it. Just get started in a small way, and it can lead to big changes. So nothing will change in your health. Nothing will change in your eating habits if you change nothing. So track it for a week, see what your common mistakes are, and then decide on something to make a change. Change something, anything. Just make a change and see where it leads. Cool. Okay, email us if you have any questions or if you want any help. Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com. If you like this podcast, please share it with family and friends. Please, please, please. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. And if you have any information that you would like, oh crap, I heard that wrong. Gone through too quick through it. So also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. So that's the part that I want to say too quickly. The podcast is for you. So we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can tell us at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful. And thank you for listening.